Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm McKelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 41 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we're discussing chapter 40 of A Game of Thrones, Catelyn 7.
As always, we'll chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully we'll provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what's happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the TV show, indulge in a little pedantry and cover some reader mail. Be sure to check out the show notes. They provide some additional information about the characters and other things of note in this chapter. How are you, sir?
I'm doing alright. How about you?
I'm doing okay. So again, for future listeners, we're in coronavirus lockdown.
Yep.
So McKelly and I, we haven't actually seen each other for 2 months now.
At least, yeah. It's been since early March, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we're mid-May.
Yeah.
So this is the one time in the week when we see each other. We have a little video chat. Hey, McKelly.
Hi.
So there's some notes here suggesting you've got something funny to tell me. Why don't you knock yourself out?
So, you know how it goes when someone says to you, hey, you look like someone? It never goes well, right? Like, I don't know, maybe that's just me. But usually when someone says you look like someone, you're always like, oh man, did you just say that? Now I'm going to have to seek therapy for this.
It is possible you look like all these people you don't find attractive. Just FYI.
That's my fear. So this past Sunday, we played a very socially distant round of golf with a coworker of Stacy's and her husband. I had never met them before. Round went very well. We had a good time. Stacy and I just played 9. But so afterward, I was actually editing the episode that went live just this week. And Stacy comes out and says, hey, my friend said you look like... And I thought, oh, shoot. What is she about to say? And she goes, my friend and her husband thought you looked like John Krasinski. And I was like, John, who's that? And I was like, John Krasinski? John Krasinski? I'll take that every day of the week. I think she's completely blind, but I will take that. Stacy's like, you know he's bald, right? But I had a hat on. I was like, I am not bald. I am balding. There is a difference, my friend.
Well, I mean, I can kind of see it. I mean, think about John Krasinski. Yes, he has an everyman face, and he's got a pleasant mien, pleasant demeanour that can, sort of disarm. And I think you definitely share that with him.
Okay.
I'll give you that.
All right.
I don't think I would mistake you for him.
Right.
I'm pretty sure Emily Blunt wouldn't marry you.
Well, now you're just tearing it down left and right. Yeah, Stacy was totally not on board with this at all. So,
with you marrying Emily Blunt, with you looking like John. Yeah.
That one she might be more on board with. I'm not sure, but yeah. So I was like, when she first said it, I was like, John Krasinski. Oh, geez, who's that? Oh.
The most recent one I had was Piers Morgan, which is awesome.
Hey, yeah.
Because I hate him so much. I hated him before I knew I looked like him. Now I'm like...
I can see it a little... I mean, yeah, I could see a little bit of what they're going with there. But
that one hurt. That one hurt. So I have a story for you. So it's going to start with some tragedy, but it will get funnier as it goes.
All right. That's the good kind. Then first the other way around.
My father was one of 5 children, and he was the first to die. And his sister Catherine passed away this last week.
Oh no! I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, she had cancer, and we kind of saw it coming, but she was way too young, and she's a terrific lady, and also a doctor of epidemiology. So someone we couldn't afford to lose at this time.
Right? Yeah.
We did, unfortunately.
I think I remember you've mentioned her to me before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's a great lady, and she'll be very sorely missed.
Yeah,
but she lived in the UK, and so her funeral, only 10 people are allowed to go to the funeral.
Oh, right, yeah.
Lockdown rules. But my mother, who was her sister-in-law,
yep,
and my sister, who is her niece, they scored tickets. They scored 2 of the 10 tickets.
Okay, with you.
So they were my mother and sister live in Manchester, and the funeral was over in, I think it was in Rotherham in Yorkshire.
Okay.
So it's like 40 miles, something like that. My mother doesn't drive, so my sister went and got my mother, drove her over there. The funeral was Thursday. And both of them, both my mother and sister, had a feeling that they'd got the day wrong.
Oh, no.
But the whole drive over, neither of them said it to the other, that they thought they'd got the day wrong.
No.
Both of them thought it, but neither of them said it. And they arrived at the funeral parlour. It was the wrong day.
Oh, no.
They were a week early for it. But the amazing thing about it was, Catherine's sister, my other aunt, happened to be there, sorting things out. So my mother and sister pull up, and my Aunt Moira says, "What the hell are you doing here?" And they're like, "Well, we're here for the funeral." She's like, "You're a week early."
Oh, man.
So, but my favourite part of it is just the thought of my mother and sister sitting in the car just going, "Well, I'm not going to mention it. I would sooner drive 80 miles out of my way." My sister bought this like really expensive bouquet of flowers and everything.
Oh, no.
It was like, oh.
Could she put them in the fridge? Will they make it till next week? Oh, my goodness.
I think she donated it to someone else. Alright. Let's get down to business. Quick recap of what Catelyn was up to last time we saw her.
All right.
Last we saw her, Cat was with her sister Lysa in the Eyrie. Her reception had not been all she'd hoped for, and she distinctly lost control of the whole Tyrion situation. She discovered Lysa to be a few cards short of a deck, and little Robert Arryn to make up for his weak and sickly disposition with a slightly uncontrolled, cruel streak. Later, she protected Tyrion from an early trip through the Moon Door, at the behest of her nephew, and then watched in dismay as Tyrion managed to arrange a trial by combat with Bronn as his champion. Why don't we give him the summary?
Okay. Sir Roderick Cassel informs Cat that the Lannisters are amassing forces and her brother Edmure is preparing the Riverlands in response. Cat snaps that she should have been awoken earlier for this news. Cat thinks her sister Lysa is clueless to the fact that she's been played so thoroughly by Tyrion. She tells Sir Roderick that regardless of the outcome of this trial by combat, it's time they return to Winterfell. Factoring in her sister's mental instability, she hopes to catch Lysa in the right mood to talk her out of this trial.
On her way to her sister's chambers, she meets her uncle Brynden Blackfish Tully. His frustration with Lysa has reached its breaking point, as she won't allow him to take any Vale troops to protect their family home of Riverrun. Cat talks Brynden into going to Winterfell with her to get the troops that he needs.
Cat finds Lysa surrounded by suitors, vying for her attention in hopes of ruling the Vale with her. She tells Lysa that the dwarf only has value alive and questions what happens if Bronn were to prevail. She's cut off by a chorus of mansplaining about how that's not likely to happen. Cat has seen Bronn fight, and so is not as confident in Ser Vardis' victory.
When the fight begins, it's clear the two combatants have very different strategies. Ser Vardis is covered from head to foot in heavy plate armour with huge oaken shield, compensating much. In contrast, Bronn wears light mail with no shield. The duel reminds her of one in her honour years ago between Brandon Stark and Peter Littlefinger Baelish. From the start, Bronn primarily evades Ser Vardis and his slower movements. Sir Roderick tells Cat that Bronn is wearing Ser Vardis down in the heavy plate armour. In the end, Bronn's strategy is successful and he emerges as the victor. Lysa has no choice but to set Tyrion free. She orders him and Bronn be taken to the Bloody Gate and released. In Cat's mind, putting them on the high road alone is another form of death sentence.
That's solid logic right there.
There is quite a lot of mansplaining in that. Now, you brought that word up in there, and I realised that is what goes on in that chapter quite a lot.
Heavy mansplaining.
Yeah.
They all want to chime in to show how much they know and how little she knows.
So we start with her receiving news of sort of wider geopolitical moves, that the Lannisters are gathering troops in the west.
Yep.
And looking east towards the Riverlands where her father lives. It makes perfect sense to me that this is the time for them to get out of there.
Yes.
The whole thing has gone completely out of hand the whole time they've been there.
Yeah.
And they should get out of there as quick as possible. In fact, I think I made this point to you while we were talking about this. I don't think they should even wait for the combat. I think they should just go.
Just right.
Because Tyrion has become Lysa's problem at this point. Let her deal with it, you know.
Yeah, certainly it doesn't seem like anything has gone to plan. I'm not sure the cat had a plan. I still don't know what her plan actually is or was. But certainly everything that's happened since they left for the Inn at the Crossroads has not gone to any way that she expected it to go, including her confidence in Tyrion's guilt. That hasn't even gone the way she expected it would.
Yeah. I think, I mean, we've talked about this quite a few times now, but I think maybe she thought that she could hold him in the Eyrie indefinitely and maybe extract some concessions out of the Lannisters for his free return or something like that.
Yeah, maybe. It seems like even in this chapter she talks about what a mummer's farce this whole trial is and how Tyrion is her prisoner, but she never really says what she wants to do. You know, what would she do if she were Lysa? What is her plan? We've not really heard a whole lot about it.
I guess that's one of the advantages of writing a book. You know, you only have to write the point of view of the actual outcome. You don't have to give everybody else's opinion on what actually would have happened.
True.
But I agree. I think it's very difficult to see a useful forward move. It's like, I play chess, as you know.
I do.
And I often get into situations... I'm not very good at chess.
I think you're quite good, but...
Well, that's kind of you to say, but I know my limitations. I am a very mediocre chess player. And I can get into a situation particularly against a player who's better than me, where I just can't think of what the next aggressive move would be. I can play holding moves to sort of like just wait to die.
Right.
But recognizing what I have to do to move forward. And I think that that's kind of the situation Kat's found herself in here, that there is no good next continuation for her. I think
that's exactly right. There is no good next move for her. There really isn't. Yeah. Other than marching Tyrion back to the Riverlands, saying, I'm sorry. That's the only thing that saves anything at this point.
Yeah, because I mean, I still think she should have taken him north, but if she took him north, she'd be in the same situation. I mean, you're holding him captive. Yep. You're never going to find more evidence against him than you already have.
Right.
What evidence you have against him is interesting, but it's not convincing.
Yep.
So what do? You either execute him or you let him go.
That's really it. Or bargain, like you were saying, use him as a bargaining chip for something.
But the thing is, the Starks weren't in a position where they needed a bargaining chip.
No, they weren't.
You know what I'm saying?
This has put them in a position.
Absolutely. Yeah. And now they've lost the bargaining chip. The bargaining chip that caused them to need a bargaining chip is now hightailing it off the mountain with Bronn.
Right.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes. Oh, man. So, once again, we get some superb imagery at the beginning of this chapter about the veil. And if you would allow me to indulge my anus... Wait, no. That's not what I meant to say.
Easy.
If you allow me to indulge real quick, I just want to read a few sentences of the imagery so that those who are not reading along with us can get it. It starts like this. The eastern sky was rose and gold as the sun broke over the Vale of Arryn. Catelyn Stark watched the light spread, her hands resting on the delicate carved stone of the balustrade outside her window. Below her, the world turned from black to indigo to green as dawn crept across the fields and forests. Pale white mists rose off Alyssa's tears, where the ghost waters plunged over the shoulder of the mountain to begin their long tumble down the face of the giant's lance. Catelyn could feel the faint touch of spray on her face. Good stuff.
Yeah, it's nice, yeah.
I've been all around this crazy world we called Westeros, and the Vale is just my favorite as far as geography.
Well, there you are. I think that's perhaps goes to your personality. You want a sort of like lush and fertile but well defended place to call your home.
Hey, that sounds pretty good. I wouldn't mind that at all. Real quick, they mention Alyssa's tears, and they mention at the beginning of this chapter who Alyssa is. So for those who are not reading along, I'll just give you a real quick recap of it. Alyssa Arryn is a tragic character from the distant past who never shed a tear in life despite seeing her husband, brothers, and children all slain. In death, the gods will not allow her to rest until her weeping watered the ground. The waterfall falls from so high, it dissipates before it reaches the ground. So still her tears don't fall. So yeah, she is the namesake of Alyssa's tears, which is a waterfall.
Yeah. So I have a thing here. I didn't think the Arryn were that ancient of a family. I thought they were more recent than that. I thought they'd only been Lords of the Vale for like a few hundred years.
But
that must be wrong.
Yeah, the Arryns date all the way back to the Andal invasion of Westeros.
Ah, well, there you are. That's how they have such ancient ancestors. I do apologise. All right, so back to the job at hand.
Yes.
When you've ruminated off on how much you love the Vale. So I wanted to sort of haul Cat up for snapping at Sir Roderick and the local Maester Coleman, for not waking her with the news of the amassing Lannister armies threatening the Riverlands. What's the point?
Right.
You're stuck in the Vale. There's a fight this afternoon that you're definitely going to watch. Why wake her up?
Right. What is she going to do with this news between the time they did wake her up and the time she wanted to be woken up? I guess maybe she's a little bit maybe she's a little bit on edge. Obviously she's a lot on edge for a lot of reasons, but she also wonders why Edmure is making these calls, and she said, that her father Hoster would not allow Edmure to make these calls unless he was really sick. So maybe she's a little bit concerned about that.
Yeah, the calls that Edmure are making are to amass his own troops on the western edge of the Riverlands to defend against a possible invasion from the Lannisters, right? So, but I mean, to leap to Edmure's defence, Edmure, who we haven't met yet and we have no idea what his character is like, has had a harsh press already, because now we've got his own father wouldn't trust him to make decisions. He's clearly making the right decision.
Yeah, no doubt.
Surely that's what House Tully would do too,
You would think so.
And remember Brynden Blackfish Tully, he slapped Edmure in the face when he left Riverrun the day the girls got married.
That's right. I'm only here for the girls, not you. That's basically what he said.
I feel for him. So Kat is fully on board with everybody now that her sister's pretty unstable. Her policies seem to change by her mood, which in turn seems to change with the turning of the clock.
Yep. Yeah, she lists all of the moods that she has noticed her sister going through, and they consist of being proud, fearful, cruel, dreamy, reckless, timid, stubborn, vain, and most of all, inconsistent. Which I think that that seems pretty clear.
Yeah.
We also learned that she had the same thought that we did, that when Tyrion wanted to confess his sins, it made most sense to do it in private with just him, Lysa, and Cat. But no, Lysa wanted a big audience, so she invited half the lords in the Vale to come listen, and that backfired on her when he requested the trial, followed by the trial by combat, because it gave her no choice to decline the...
So that's your contention here, that by doing it in public, she could not refuse, whereas in private she could have refused?
Yeah, exactly. In private, she could have sent him back to the dungeon, or maybe Kat could have said, that's not necessary, let's just talk it out. But when he requests it in front of everyone, it's his right, so she has to honor it. And that's also, I think, what Kat means when she says here in this same paragraph that her sister has been played so thoroughly by Tyrion, and she doesn't even realize it.
Yeah. So she On her way to Lysa, she bumps into her uncle Brynden, who has just announced that he's quit his job as defender of the...
He's the Knight of the
Gates
Gate.
of the Moon. Knight of the Gate, that's right, thank you. Because she won't allow him to take men to defend the Riverlands from the Lannisters.
Yeah. And he says, Blackfish or not, I'm still a Tully. So I'm off like immediately to go help defend the Riverlands and Riverrun. But Lysa's also Tully, so it's kind of a double slap in the face that not only is she denying him this request, but she's also a Tully, and she's denying him this request.
Yeah, it does feel like it's a. I mean, I know she's already said that all she really cares about is defending the Vale. She doesn't want anyone to get into the Vale, and Brynden is asking for 1,000 men, right? That's the number he's quoting. He wants 1,000 men.
Yes,
that's a lot. But the Vale is so defensible. You don't need all your men.
Right.
You could afford to send a bunch of them down there to help stop this before it gets to your doors.
Yeah, even defending the Riverlands ultimately defends the Vale, because the Riverlands are between the Westerlands.
True,
but
if the 1,000 men are all lost in the defense of the Riverlands,
that's true,
which fails, then they're not there to defend the Vale.
Yep, that's true.
But it feels like unless they only have like 1,012 men, that they should still be able to defend the Vale without the 1,000.
Right. That's true, yeah. As long as they have more than 12, they should be good.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, sky and stone and snow will all have to be sort of slightly skeleton-staffed to help defend the bloody gate.
Well, hey, if worse comes to worse, they can just push prisoners out of their cells down onto the armies below. But Varys was half right. Remember back in Arya 3 when Arya was listening to Illyrio Mopatis and Lord Varys, he said that Lysa was amassing swords. And he's right. She does seem to be amassing swords, but doesn't appear to be for any sort of attack on taking over the Iron Throne or anything. It seems to be solely for the purpose of defending the Vale and keeping her, basically, Robert, safe.
Yeah, and certainly her refusal of Brynden's request confirms that.
Yeah.
So Brynden was planning to take the high road on his own back down to the Riverlands. We know from the experience of Cat and Ser Roderick and Bronn how risky that is.
Yeah, that's pretty much suicide on your own.
Yeah. So Cat and Ser Roderick offer that if he goes with them to Gulltown, which is basically, instead of heading back west towards the Riverlands, head east out of the Vale to the coast.
Yeah.
They can get a ship from there back to the north.
Yes, sir.
And from the north, she can give him the troops he needs to help defend the river.
Because she can defend Moat Cailin in the neck with just 12 troops. That's all she...
Exactly. That's the thing. Both of these regions have like perfectly defensible choke points. We've already discussed this at length.
And of course, Sir Roderick is thrilled about the idea of taking a ship back to Winterfell.
He's the only person not looking forward to the 14-day ride.
And his whiskers are just starting to come back in too. He's just starting to look like himself again. It would be a much, much shorter ride than it was all the way to King's Landing.
So Cat and Ser Roderick finally make their way to Lysa's chambers, which look out onto a garden where the fight is going to be held. Before we get to what happens, just a mention again of little Robert and how horrible he is, basically. Unfettered rottenness. He's crying out for the bloodshed and Tyrion's moon door dispatch, and he's whooping in delight. There's a puppet show going on in front of him, and when that gets bloody and horrible, he gets all more excited and happy. So, yeah, he's a stern talking to.
He's waiting impatiently for this fight to start so that he can throw Tyrion out the moon door and watch him fly. He's single-mindedly obsessed with this idea of watching Tyrion fly out the moon door.
In his defence, actually, here, Robert, not defence, but just like a sort of like tangential giving him credit, that's quite clever of the 6-year-old to understand the concept of trial by champion.
Yes.
Enough to recognise that he'll be able to do that. Of course, I think at the end of the chapter, he doesn't quite understand it. He still wants Tyrion to be pushed out the door.
He says, "Can I throw him out the door now? Can I make him fly now?" And Lysa's like, "No, unfortunately not."
Yeah. So the scene of the fight is this pleasant garden with statues and flowers. A picnic's been laid out. It's a nice festive atmosphere. And the mansplaining lords are all vying for Lysa's ear and her attention.
Yeah. And based on the conversations, this is when all the mansplaining happens. When Cat tries to prevail on her sister Lysa to stop this duel before it begins. And then she just gets one lord after another explaining to her why there's no fear of Bronn winning this battle. But of course, they haven't seen him fight. Whereas Cat and Ser Roderick seem to be the only ones entertaining the notion that he might win, and that's because they just spent however long with him on the high road seeing him fight. And I think Cat refers to him as fighting like a panther, moving like a panther or something like that.
Right, yeah. So Cat explains to Lysa that Tyrion only has value alive, and if he dies, God help us all,
Yes.
The lords explain to her that sellswords are all cowards at heart, and Ser Vardis will surely win.
Yes, that's part of the mansplaining that goes on there.
Yeah.
And Cat wonders to them what is gained by killing Tyrion. Her thing is, would Jamie care if we gave him a trial before flinging him off the mountain? Which he won't. He's not going to care at all about that.
The king might, though. Robert Baratheon could.
Yeah.
Because he might intercede and say, look, he was given a trial, he lost it, he paid with his life, He called for the trial by combat.
Right. That's a good point. And in that case, having the audience there to prove that he did request a trial by combat would actually work in Lysa's favor.
Yeah. But still, it's still a no-win situation. I mean, if Bronn loses, Tyrion dies, immediate war. And Ned and the girls are trapped in King's Landing.
Exactly.
That's surrounded by enemies.
Yeah.
And if Bronn wins, which we know he's about to, then Tyrion's free.
Yep.
And cleared of the charges.
Yep.
Which might have been true for all we know.
And like you said earlier, the chip that they had has now left the Vale.
Yeah, exactly. So, coming back to what Tyrion's accused of, I mean, Cat arrested him because of she feels that he had tried to assassinate Bronn Stark in his bed. Now they've arrived in the Vale, a new charge has been levelled against him, which is of the murder of Jon Arryn. So Cat and Ser Roderick discuss the likelihood of that, and neither of them is very convinced.
No.
Cat recalls that the famous note hidden in the box, written in cipher that she burned immediately, accused Cersei Lannister, not Tyrion Lannister.
Yeah. It certainly would have worked out better had she just not even read it. She has a history of that. When Peter Baelish sent her that letter after Brandon's death, she didn't bother to read it. She just burned it in the fire. So, there's precedent.
Point.
She could have just taken it and burned it.
She should have thought to herself, this is so sensitive, even I shouldn't read it.
But it also made me think that, man, she might possibly be just like sick to herself. You checking out your biceps there?
I've got poison ivy.
I told you. What was the one thing I said when you were doing all that yard work? Don't get poison ivy.
I got it in my right nostril. It's unbelievable. It's absolutely... I found a poison ivy bush in my yard. Poison ivy is like a trailing vine, which sort of grows on the floor. I found 8 foot high, 2 foot deep, and 10 foot long poison ivy in my yard.
Wow.
It was like...
That's like intentionally harvesting poison ivy.
So I was cutting it down. It was falling on my head. It was going down my neck.
Oh my
I had a plumber's butt, so I got my butt cracked.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes. That's unfortunate. All of that, especially down the butt crack. Very unfortunate.
Yeah.
But so what I was saying was, she must be possibly sick to herself that she's the one that convinced Ned, that talked Ned into, well, kind of coerced him into coming up with his own realization that he needed to go to King's Landing to figure out who killed Jon Arryn. And that was all her masterminding him coming to this conclusion. And now it comes from the letter from a lady who clearly is just like Grand Maester Pycelle said way back when, that she sees enemies in shadows.
Yeah. But you know what? I wonder, thinking back on it, if it mattered what they talked about, Cat and Ned. Because, look at Ned's back as Hand of the King, right?
Yeah.
Last we saw, Robert threw the pin back at him and said, "Pin that back on yourself. Someone needs to rule the realm for me. Yeah, I'm off to hunt." Yeah. So I wonder if that would have been the outcome in Winterfell if they'd had a united front and said, "Let's not do this. I'll miss you too much. You stay here."
Right. Yeah, that's very possible.
I wonder if they would have ended up just going anyway, just because it's impossible to refuse the king.
Yeah. When we were discussing that way back in, I think that was like the second Catelyn chapter, we hadn't seen yet the king say, "I command you to be my Hand of the King." So at the time, we were discussing it like he had a choice. But it's very possible that he could have said, "No, I'm sorry, Robert, I can't go." And Robert could have said, "Well, I'm overruling you. You are."
Yeah, I think Cat might have said it at the time. He doesn't travel 30 days in a thing to get a no.
Right.
You know? That
would be both embarrassing and be very put out. He now has to turn around and go all the way back with no Hand of the King.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, so we've said this before. It seems that Lysa was simply accusing the nearest Lannister.
Yeah, that was, I think you made that point last time we saw Tyrion.
Just before the fight starts, there's a truncated conversation with Maester Coleman, which I found particularly curious, about the plans for Robert's fostering.
Yes.
Cat is under the impression that he was going to be sent to Casterly Rock because Tywin Lannister had volunteered to foster him.
Right. That was probably told to her back when they were in Winterfell, because that's what King Robert told Ned when they were in the crypts paying their respects to Lyanna. So that was probably that is the last she had heard. She didn't get the update that Ned got in King's Landing. Right,
because he heard from the potboy in King's Landing that Jon had brokered a deal with Stannis Baratheon to have Robert Arryn fostered on Dragonstone.
Yes, and that's one way to toughen that kid up.
Yes, but again, as we made the point before, so was Casterly Rock with Tywin Lannister.
That's true.
Both of these would have been very good for Robert Arryn.
But now that we know Lysa like we do, can you imagine how that would have gone over if she were made aware that not only was her baby, as she constantly refers to him, being taken from her, but being fostered either in Casterly Rock or on Dragonstone? That had to have gone over like a lead balloon.
Was she aware that Jon was making this plan with Stannis?
We don't know.
Do we know that?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We do know that she was aware that King Robert was making the plan with Tywin, and that's why they fled in the middle of the night back to the Vale.
But a question on timing there. Was that plan prior to Jon Arryn's death?
No, that was after Jon Arryn's death.
It was after Jon Arryn's death that plan was made.
To my understanding.
So I think I know what you're getting at. Are you suggesting that Lysa Arryn has a motive for murder?
Just putting it out there that she would have been very displeased by this this proclamation.
So then the sequence of events goes, the only place Robert Arryn is being fostered is Dragonstone. And the only person who's brokering that deal is Jon Arryn. She kills Jon Arryn thinking, oh, hey, I've got rid of it. I can keep Robert with me forevermore. The king says, oh, I've got a great idea. My namesake can go to Casterly Rock with Tywin Lannister. So she flees, not because she's afraid of the murderer of Jon Arryn, who doesn't exist or is in fact her, but because she doesn't want to lose Robert. The whole point was she was trying to keep Robert. And now there's nothing to keep her in King's Landing because she's no longer married to the Hand of the King.
That is a very solid theory.
Okay, so I see what you're saying. Give that some credence, but I went the opposite way. I think that this gives the Lannisters a motive.
Sure. I think I know where you're going with this. Do tell.
Because, so, now, with a slightly different timeline, because we don't know exactly the timeline here.
Yeah.
Slightly different timeline. While Jon is brokering the deal to get Robert fostered in Dragonstone, Robert Baratheon is brokering a different deal to get Robert Arryn fostered in Casterly Rock. Okay?
Yes, following you.
This then becomes a motive for the Lannisters to murder Jon Arryn. Because Jon Arryn is trying to prevent something that they want. They want Robert Arryn to be fostered in Casterly Rock. They get wind of the fact that he is trying to have him fostered in Dragonstone. To stop that, they kill Jon Arryn.
Sure.
Now, nothing to stop their plan of having Robert Arryn transported to Casterly Rock. Why is that advantageous to them? Because now they've got a lock on him, and there's no way that the Vale counters the Lannisters while the Vale's heir and only son is in Casterly Rock.
Yeah, interesting.
So that works for me because it's clear that Jon and Stannis' relationship contributed to his death in some way.
Sure. It certainly seems possible, yeah.
Right. It seems that was, it was what they were doing together, and part of what they were doing together was planning the fostering of Robert.
Yeah.
So it does give... So I like the idea that although I voiced, I think is your idea, of this giving a motive to Lysa, but I think that it also gives a motive to the Lannisters too.
Sure, yeah, depending on how you look at it.
Depending on that timeline. Yeah.
And maybe at the same time that deal was being brokered, Jamie... Well, he couldn't have done that till after... Because Jamie was then named Warden of the East. So maybe the Lannisters have been trying to get a foothold in the East. When Jon Arryn died, maybe he started campaigning for him being Warden of the East, or Tywin started putting pressure on Robert for him being Warden of the East.
And of course, the other aspect of that is that we've talked before about how Jamie being Warden of the East makes so little sense
None at all.
with Robert Arryn in the Vale.
Right.
But if Robert Arryn is not in the Vale, if instead he's being fostered in Casterly Rock, then Jamie as a temporary or a regent Warden of the East does make some sense.
A little bit. Still probably a slap in the face to the Lords of the Vale, who we are discovering are possibly a bunch of bumbling idiots in the first place. So Robert might be right in not naming someone else in the Vale as Warden of the East.
Yeah. So to get into the fight, my question about the fight...
One quick final thing about that stuff we were just talking about. Keep in mind that the male Arryn line is razor thin at this point. It is just Robert Arryn is the only male Arryn with the last name Arryn left.
That's right. We talked about that on the last Tyrion chapter, whatever it was.
Yeah, so
or Cat.
That puts even extra importance on his safety. So if he's being fostered in Casterly Rock, then the Vale are they're nearly helpless.
Yeah, which again goes to the strategic importance of that fostering, because I think at some point, this might be from the TV show, but at some point I heard that Tywin had never offered to foster anyone before.
That is correct.
This is the first child he'd ever offered to foster.
That is true.
Why would he do it? It's purely for the strategic advantage of having the Vale under your thumb.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
And reinforcing the idea, like you said, if they've been agitating for Jamie to be the Warden of the East, with Tywin as Warden of the West, it helps. It definitely helps.
Sure.
I mean, it's absolutely, you've said from the get-go, it's stupid to have him as Warden of the East, but only with Robert in place. With Robert in Casterly Rock, it makes a lot more sense.
Yep.
So anyway, to the fight. My question about the fight is, if you're Ser Vardis Egen, why wear heavy armour? I don't understand this. It's going to, in mano-a-mano combat, it's going to leave you vulnerable. If you're in a big battle melee situation, it's going to defend you from blows that you don't see coming.
Yes,
yeah?
Right.
Because there are going to be people all around you, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But in one-to-one combat, you see everything coming. You don't need the heavy armour. It's just going to slow you down. And that's totally what Bronn does.
Yeah.
He just doesn't wear the heavy armor and is much quicker than Lysa.
The whole thing, it really makes no sense. I mean, you have to keep in mind, this is the captain of the Arryn household guard and the master-at-arms of the Eyrie, both having a serious misjudgment in how to suit Ser Vardis Egen up. So are they getting outplayed in weapon tactics by a sellsword is basically what we're getting at here.
But again, I mean, maybe man-to-man combat they haven't really thought of. Maybe all of their combat training is for big battles where everybody's lined up and there's going to be people all around you.
I guess, yeah. Maybe there's not a lot of duels.
Right, but I'm with you. It just seems like a terrible misjudgment.
It does. It's just those are two guys who should know how best to duel, and
yeah, unless they're not up to their jobs.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Kat mentions that Bronn is half a hand, which I looked up because I didn't know how much a hand was. It apparently is 4 inches. So Bronn is 2 inches taller and 15 years younger than Ser Vardis. So maybe he's trying to make up for it by being heavily armored. But still, he has to know how long can you sword fight wearing all that stuff.
But there you go. Ser Vardis is slightly smaller. So in a equal fight, he would probably be the quicker person.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that.
So all he's done is now he's smaller and heavier.
It's smaller and slower. Not exactly the combo
heavier,
you
slower,
want.
and older.
Yeah. The trifecta you don't want in a fight.
So yeah, you mentioned that the duel reminds Kat of the fight between her betrothed Brynden Stark and Littlefinger.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot to learn from that. I mean, we get the description. We've heard about it in the past that there was this duel.
The one thing that struck me was that she never saw him again.
Right.
That was the very last time. She never saw him recuperating or anything.
Yeah.
She never laid eyes again on Littlefinger until she saw him in King's Landing.
Yeah, right. Now, she wanted to. Her father wouldn't let her. So, it
Right.
wasn't for lack of trying. But basically, we learned just a very small few things of that. We also learned that he left on bad terms because Hoster had him sent back to the Fingers after...
As soon as he was well enough to travel,
He was shipped back to where he's from, the Fingers, which is a little group of peninsulas, I guess they'd be. And we learned that Lysa was the only one allowed to help him recover. Edmure wanted to come visit him, but Edmure was Brandon's squire for the battle, and Peter wouldn't forgive him for doing that, so he refused to allow him to come see him, and we know Kat was never allowed to go see him. So the other thing we learned was that Brandon apparently showed up to the duel wearing a lot of armor, saw that Peter was not wearing a lot of armor, and took off some of his armor. So there is precedent for realizing, I'm wearing too much armor for this duel. Let me take some of this off. Apparently,
I'll go out on a limb here and say that Brynden Stark was going to win that battle. Armor or no
he could have been stark naked. Literally, stark
Exactly.
naked.
It's good. Well done. Yeah, I see you did that. So Bronn's fighting tactics bring scorn and ridicule from the Lords of the Vale, but Sir Roderick from the get-go sees it for what it is, and I think Kat does too, but we hear it from Sir Roderick that he's letting the heavily armoured man tire himself out. It reminded me, and actually made me go and watch the video of the Rumble in the Jungle, the Muhammad Ali, where he rope-a-dopes and lets George Foreman punch himself to a standstill.
I saw that in the notes, and I thought, that's a good analogy there. Yeah. But this goes back again to clearly Sir Roderick quickly gets what's happening. He's also a master at arms of a...
He's a better one.
Yes,
but again, like you said, he does have the advantage of having just witnessed Bronn fight. So he knows what Bronn's capable of.
Yeah.
They all think he's just a sellsword. He's a nothing. They don't realise that they've actually got someone potent in there.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess that really must be it. Because you'd think Sir Roderick might have mentioned at some point, hey, this guy's, he's no joke. Don't take him lightly.
Yeah.
I saw him fight.
Yeah. So. He did tell them that, so they put extra armor on.
I know how we'll fix it.
One of the things I liked about the description of the fight is that Tyrion is just watching it without blinking.
Right, yeah.
Just like, as you would. Your life's on the balance,
I mean, I know when I watch a Steelers game, sometimes my heart is in my throat. Every single pass and every single play feels like life or death. In this instance, it really is life or death.
And your life is only metaphorically on the line. His is literally on the line.
So ultimately, Bronn's tactics are successful, and what ends up happening is he ends up toppling the statue of Alyssa Arryn, who we referenced is the Tears of Alyssa, or the namesake of Alyssa Arryn, and there's a statue of her here in this garden. He topples the statue over on top of Ser Vardis, who gets pinned underneath it, and then he just knocks off one of his plates and stabs him right through the heart, and he dies, which not only releases Tyrion, but also, in the eyes of the gods, he is proven innocent. So,
Yep.
And he says, so that's when Robert Arryn says, "Can I make him fly now?" And Tyrion says, "Not this little man. This little man's going down in a turnip basket." And Lysa says, "So you presume?" And then Tyrion throws back in her face, "I presume that the Arryns hold their own words to heart, which is as high as honor." So,
very nice, yes. So Lysa issues the command that Tyrion and Bronn be escorted to the Bloody Gate. Cat is thinking, she thinks they're going to die on the road. And so if Tyrion dies on the road, then we're back to square one.
Right.
Tyrion died because of Cat, and so let loose the dogs of war.
Yes, true. Yeah, that is definitely feels like a death sentence, being sent out onto the high road alone.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there were 8 or 9 of them on the way up, and only 4 made it. So 2 on their own doesn't sound good.
No.
But one of them is Bronn, who's proven himself to be handy. Okay, so to background. Edmure Tully, Catelyn's brother, heir to Riverrun, is adding troops to the at the pass below the Golden Tooth. The Golden Tooth is a town on the border between the West and the Riverlands. It's actually in the West, so it belongs to the Lannisters. It's a Lannister defensive stronghold. He sent Lords Clement Piper, Lord of Pink Maiden. The Piper's sigil is a naked lady dancing on a blue background, and Pipers tend to have red hair. And Lord Vance. There are 2 Vance houses in the Riverlands, the Vances of Atranta and the Vances of Wayfarer's Rest. In this case, it's the latter. They have a cool sigil. I like the sigil a lot. It's a quartered silver and black. On the silver quarters, there are black dragons, and on the black quarters, there are golden eyes in a golden circle.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It's
2 cool sigils.
It is a cool sigil. Yeah. Yeah, they're both good. I mean, the naked lady dancing on the blue background has caused some problems for them.
Oh, okay.
some slander has been sent their way.
All right, yeah.
About,
they're very risque house.
Yeah, is that your mama? That kind of thing. And fights have ensued.
Well, I'm not going to do a eulogy for Ser Vardis Egen, mostly because I don't have enough information on him to do so. But being that he perished in this battle, I did figure I would talk a little bit about House Egen. And much like Ser Vardis, House Egen itself is loyal to the end to their liege lords. House Egen has served House Arryn since the coming of the Andals, which was somewhere between 2,000 to 6,000 years ago, so it seems like it's been enough time to have proven their loyalty. In fact,
there's got to be some disloyalty peppered in that length of time.
Come on.
Forever.
It's got to be some bad seeds, some selfish Egens through the years.
Exactly.
But in fact, their arms boast that the Egens will serve their liege at all hours, and their words are actually by day or night. And during Lysa's brief time at the helm, I'm sure that boast has been put to test. Their sigil is a yellow sun, a white crescent moon, and a silver star on a blue banner above white.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, coincidentally, Peter Littlefinger Baelish's brothels have the sign by day or night. I'm making that up. Okay, so comparison with the television show. All of the preamble to the fight that we saw with Cat being woken up, Cat talking to Maester Coleman, Cat talking to the Lords. All of that skipped in the TV show. The previous scene that we saw in the Eyrie was when Bronn volunteered to fight, and then the next scene was the fight. There was nothing in between them.
Yeah.
So still no Brynden Blackfish Tully. He is not there. No news of the Lannisters gathering their forces. No conversation about planning to leave for Winterfell. There's also no obvious suitors vying for Lysa's attention.
Okay.
Lysa's only interaction is with little Robert. The scene of the fight is the throne room. I mean, basically everything in the Eyrie happens in the throne room in the TV show. The moon door is open, and as I mentioned, it's in the floor, so there's a big hole in the ground, which adds an extra frisson to the fight.
So they're fighting around this hole in the floor.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. In the book, Bronn gets his nose broken in the fight, but in the show, Ser Vardis doesn't lay a finger on him. It's a completely one-sided debacle. He has a couple of near scrapes, but he's always going to win that fight. Bronn does get a nice one-liner in after throwing the dead Ser Vardis down out of the moon door. Lysa shouts, "You did not fight with honor!" And Bronn, glancing down, says, "He did."
Oh, man. The reverence.
Yes. So, to pedantry, we've touched on this a couple of times, but let's just stress it again. The Lords of the Vale are idiots.
They really are.
Not one of them is any use. We noticed this last time. They seem unable to grasp that Tyrion might use a champion. They are yes-men toadies to everything that Lysa does and says. And even though her actions are crying out for a voice of reason in there, none of them seem to want to step up and do it.
Yeah, it's... and they clearly have never seen a duel before, I guess. Like, this is their first time ever seeing a duel because they came totally unprepared for it. And no one looked at that armor situation and thought, oh boy, Ser Vardis is no spring chicken. I hope he can...
he's sweating away in that armor over there.
No one notices this except for Sir Roderick.
And Bronn. Because I think Bronn's offered something, isn't he? A shield, and he says, "Nah, I don't need that."
That's exactly.
He just wants to be as light as possible.
Yeah. So
come on, if you've got pedantry, spit it out, man.
It's not necessarily pedantry. It's just Kat is quite the Torny groupie based on this statement that she doesn't say it. She thinks it. She says she's been to 100 tourneys. So either it's not to be taken literally, or she has been to many a tourney. She is like 34 to 35. She was married at 19, right as a war was breaking out. So you figure there's not a whole lot of tournaments going on at that exact time. And we know the North doesn't look on tournaments the same way as the rest of the realm. We also know that Sansa's never been to a tournament before until she went to the Hands tourney, which Kat was not present at. So it's not a great deal. So basically between, I don't know, maybe she went to her first tournament at about 5 or so even, we'll give her. She got married at 19. She would have to average just under 4 tournaments a year, every year, from that age gap there.
This is rock solid. This is excellent pedantry. Well done. This is why Pedantry Corner exists, for this kind of utterly useless but entirely correct minutiae. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's no way she's been to 50. But I'll jump to her defense. Maybe it's her math that's terrible. When she said 100, she meant 8.
I'm not saying it couldn't be done.
50?
It just seems like an awful lot. She could have been a tournament groupie as a young teen, you know? Just following them all around the realm like a deadhead.
All right, let's draw some conclusions here. So, honestly, of the 2 possible outcomes of this fight, this was the best result for Kat.
Yes, I agree.
At least she can get out of here and go home. I mean, I guess that's what she would have done if Tyrion had been put to death, but she can go to a home that isn't necessarily going to be at war for the next 10 years.
Right, yeah. Now, it was never exactly clear what she wanted to do with Tyrion in the first place. I'm wondering how much doubt created indecision here, because she started off fully convinced that he tried to kill Bran. And I think right now she has a whole lot of doubt about whether or not he was actually the person that paid the guy to try and kill Bran.
if she believes in the laws of the realm, then he's proven himself
Right.
innocent. He absolutely didn't.
If she's as pious as she says she is, actually, I've never
true,
actually heard her say how
absolutely.
pious she is. But
I think. Well, I mean, she's certainly more pious to the new gods than the rest of her
Yes.
family, but that's because they're pious to the old gods.
Right.
So it's bad news for the Vale all round because they've lost their best soldier in Brynden
right?
Tully.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's and
he's obviously
Ser Vardis.
Yeah, Ser Vardis was no mug. I mean, obviously he wasn't the greatest, but he was definitely one of the better ones. And actually, I don't know if I'm mixing the TV show and the book, but he actually was quite thoughtful in the TV show compared to the rest of the Lords of the Vale, anyway.
Yeah.
Because remember, he said he didn't want to fight.
Right, yes.
Because he thought it was beneath him.
Yes,
yeah?
he did say that.
The rest of them were all like, woohoo! I'm going to chop me up some dwarf, you know.
Even Lord Ian Hunter, who is said to be older than Jon Arryn and has gout, he even said, "Let me at him. Let me champion you." Imagine how that fight would have gone against Bronn.
Yeah.
Can I change my request, please? I did not know it was going to be against that guy.
Jamie Lannister, you said, "Oh, change my mind." So the Lords of the Vale seem way more interested in sucking up to Lysa than giving her any kind of wise counsel.
Yeah.
I mean, surely, like you said, taking the fight to the Lannisters keeps the fight from the Vale.
Yeah.
You know, it's worth risking a few hundred men. So it's not in great shape. Sure, it's defensible, but it's just not in a great shape.
Luckily, they've got that bloody gate. As long as you keep that
Yeah.
gate closed, maybe you don't need very competent lords behind it.
And this whole thing will have significantly strained the relationship between the Vale and the Riverlands, and between the Vale and the North.
Right. Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
if something happens to the Vale, if they are invaded, so Brynden is going to go back to the Riverlands and say they weren't going to help, so I left. And Cat's going to go back to the North and say, well, if Lysa runs into trouble, tough. I'm not helping her.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's a lunatic.
But it does also seem like the Lannisters are really showing as if they're preparing for war over this. It could just be posturing, you know. They could just be banging on their chests and lining soldiers up and stuff. But them amassing troops coupled with the attack on Ned certainly gives the appearance of them being serious.
Yeah. It's one thing that I was thinking about a little bit was Jaime's decision to flee King's Landing after hurting Ned.
Right.
Because, he felt like he was in the right when he did it.
Yes.
Ned was not Hand of the King. He had no power.
Yeah. Unless his plan was to
Why
go to
flee?
Casterly Rock and start amassing troops after he, what was the term he used? Chastened Ned.
Right. But you'd think a raven to Tywin would work. You know, hey, Dad, amass some troops and take them and avenge
Of course, it's possible that Tywin could be like, meh, it's only Tyrion.
No. Yeah. But I mean, essentially, this is yet another oath breaking
Yes, it is.
by Jaime.
He is a member of the King's Guard, so he shouldn't just be randomly fleeing the city.
Tyrion is out of the frying pan, but there's a bit of a fire to be dealt with here.
Yes, the high road can be a bit hot.
Yes.
If he dies on the high road, does that change the outcome? I'm not necessarily sure that it does.
No, I mean, put myself in Jamie Lannister's shoes? Absolutely
Right.
not. If I don't see my brother again safe and well, then his demise is on Catelyn Stark's hands. I honestly think, I know this is not going to happen, and not just because I've read the book, but because I know this is not going to happen, that Tyrion and Bronn should go with Catelyn and Sir Roderick to Goldtown. And Brynden Blackfish Tully. That's a force. That's a useful little contingent.
It would be,
right
yeah,
there.
yeah.
And in Goldtown, they can get ships in different
Right.
directions.
Yeah, I mean,
they can say their fond farewell.
all except for Brynden Tully, you know, they face the high road together. It's just like, you know.
Yeah, and Tully is clearly a fighter. All right, let's draw a conclusion to all
Okay.
this. So, as always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at ghostharrenhall. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
If you like what we're doing, please consider leaving us a review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Podchaser.com, anywhere that you can leave a review for podcasts. It would be a great way to really help us out, and we'd very much appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.